Hello, everyone. I'd like to introduce you to the first expert that we interviewed. His name is Mr. Tom Kaye. Mr. Kaye is currently serving as an independent researcher for the Foundation for Scientific Advancement, but he previously worked as a research associate at the Burke Museum for Natural History and Culture in Seattle, Washington, specializing in paleontology and astrophysics. In 2008, he was approached by the FBI to assist in investigating the D.B. Cooper case, specifically focusing on the ransom money that was found at Tina Bar and the clip-on tie that they believed to belong to D.B. Cooper. Now, with his scanning electron microscope survey of the clip-on tie, they found titanium metal fragments that greatly narrowed down the list of possible suspects for the FBI. Now, since 2008, Mr. Kaye has been the principal researcher for Citizen Sleuth, which is a citizen-led research group that focuses on the D.B. Cooper mystery, as well as maintaining a website that provides the most up-to-date information on the case. Now, the term Citizen Sleuth actually comes from a case agent that worked on the D.B. Cooper case, Special Agent Larry Carr. And Citizen Sleuth is the title that he gave to Mr. Kaye and his team when he would talk about them to the media regarding the new data and investigative leads that Mr. Kaye and his team were generating for the FBI. So without further ado, here are some highlights from our interview.
My question was, in your opinion, what is the largest contributing factor as to why the case remains unsolved?
That's a really good question. He really got away clean with it, and considering they had a good look at him, supposedly he was not wearing the sunglasses the whole time he was on the plane. He seemed very nonchalant, but knew things from the air. In other words, when they flew over Tacoma, Washington with partially cloudy skies, he identified that. He said, "Oh yeah, that's Tacoma down there." So he'd been in the area enough to kind of know what was going on, but he wasn't worried about getting found out by whoever would see this in the news kind of thing. So that's part of the mystery that keeps this whole thing going. That's why he's become a legend, because he pulled off an incredibly ridiculous heist and just walked away into the night and was never seen again. Probably, they didn't have modern forensic techniques, I'd say would be the biggest reason. Today, if they found his cigarette butts on the plane today, he would have been nailed instantly. So back then, they did the best job they could, and this is what I always say. I saw what they went through, and I've seen the 302s that are inches thick. And they were just trying to do the person follow-up. They were hoping somebody was going to rat them out, which is what they still do today. If somebody ratted them out, they'd catch them. It just didn't happen. So that's why we think he went back into his old life. They've got statistics on this, actually. Now, you can look them up in crime statistics. That like 60% of these hijackers that hijacked airplanes went back to their normal life. So it would make a lot of sense if this guy was just a dude. He had a $100,000 problem or $200,000 problem, had to solve it, and walked away and went back to his life and never talked about it again. And that's one of the reasons why we think probably now is the best time to catch him, because if somebody knew something, and somebody probably did, it's hard to pull this off in a complete vacuum. They wouldn't say anything until the guy was dead. And right about now, he'd be in his 90s. So once he dies, then there's a very good chance somebody will come forward. And even D.B. Cooper profile, according to Tom Kaye. So he's in his 40s. He's educated. He's well-spoken. He actually cares about people because he wanted food brought in for the pilots, because he knew they were going to be flying for a long time. He tried to tip the flight attendants, and they said, "No, we can't take money. It's against our rules," which they were chastised for later, saying you should have taken the money. Then he wouldn't have gotten away with all of it, right? You can't win on this stuff. So he was extremely comfortable in a tie, which means he probably wore this as an everyday attire. So that right away puts him into a fairly narrow category, relatively affluent, relatively educated, flew on a plane very comfortably, which was, flying planes back then was was much rarer than it is today. Today we hop on a plane like it's a taxi. So he knew what he was doing. He had a kind of a broad base of information. So the guy had been around. He used the name Dan Cooper. So Dan Cooper doesn't mean anything in this country, but if you've been doing your research, you found out that Dan Cooper is a big deal in Canada. So Canada then suddenly comes into play in this, because the Dan Cooper in Canada is an Air Force pilot, and he jumps out of airplanes and gets the bad guys, and he's admired by women, or admired by men and wanted by women. So somebody from Canada may use Dan Cooper the same way I might use James Bond as an alias, you know, because it's kind of suave. So if you look into the Canadian connection, and you also look at the fact that he requested negotiable American currency. Nobody in this country would ever ask for negotiable American currency. It's, I want 200 grand in cash, right? The only place you can come from in the world, not in the United States, but still sound like you come from America, is certain parts of Canada. So there's two lines of evidence there that kind of point toward Canada. So I'd be looking for a middle-aged guy from Canada that's in some kind of a specialty manufacturing, chemical, or sales position that put him into these worlds, and then he got into some type of trouble and needed a bunch of money to get out of it, and then went back to his normal life.